Hey, it's Drybear. We're continuing our series of covering every spec and class in Dragonflight, and today we're going to talk about the Holy Priest healing in raid settings. I'll give you a build down below in the description that you can import directly into your game and you're ready to go, and we'll talk about how to play, the specific abilities you need to be aware of, as well as what to look out for. If you have any questions or comments for me, you'll find me live every day on twitch.tv/Drybear. Come by and say hi. All right, let's talk Holy Priest in raid. Holy Priest is one of what I would call the core raid healers in the game, and that is their biggest asset is just throughput. They are exceptionally good at putting out numbers. They don't bring a whole lot else besides just lots and lots and lots of HPS. So they're your traditional raid healer. They focus on keeping the whole group up, and they have many ways to do this. If you want general mechanics from a different perspective, I do have a Mythic Plus guide for Holy Priest, but for the sake of this video, we'll cover all the basic mechanics for Holy Priest. We'll go into build, of which I think there's only really one. There's some small variants you can make in the build here, and we'll talk about that, but this is the core build that I would run for raid when you're talking about Holy Priest. Okay, so how does Holy Priest work? Holy Priest has two main heals. They're one of the oldest healers in the game, which means they were on the old school system of fast and expensive heal plus cheap heal that's slower. So they have Flash Heal, which is a single target cast heal. You can cast this quickly. It is not very mana efficient, but it is a fast way to get a lot of healing out and is useful to get some good single target healing. Alternatively, as Holy, you have Heal, which is your slower casting spell that does good healing, but it's slower and a little bit more mana efficient than your Flash Heal. Those two together give you some great options, especially for Mythic Plus. And unless you're running Pontifex, which you probably won't if you're brand new to Holy Priest, then you're not really going to be casting single target heals all that much unless you're healing a tank or trying to spot heal someone that's about to die. Next, the claim to fame for Holy Priest is the Power Word spells. So you have Holy Word. You have Holy Word Serenity and Holy Word Sanctify. These are your two big boy heals, and they have a base recharge of 1 minute. So Sanctify is your AoE. You cast it, it heals an AoE, and then Serenity is your single target. You pop it, it's a big single target heal. They both go on cooldown for a minute. But when you cast spells that are related to that, so for Serenity, which is your single target heal, if you cast single target heals, you will lower the cooldown remaining left on that until it resets, which is super nice. So you can get some really cool resets on that, boom, then it comes back. For your reset on Sanctify, you need to do AoE healing, the most common of which is Prayer of Healing. So this is your casted AoE spell. This is a very easy way to get tons of healing out in a group. It heals everyone in an area and then lowers the cooldown on Sanctify. So you get it back, you're ready to go. You can pop your AoE again. Now, if you run this raid general build, the prayers build is what I've named it. Then you'll be able to get more value out of Circle of Healing, which is just an instant cast AoE heal that will lower the cooldown on your Sanctify, but it gives you good value. Now that we're talking about Holy Words, it's a good time to talk about the Divine Word cooldown, which is brand new. I love it. It makes my Holy Priest feel so good. So Divine Word is a 1 minute cooldown. You activate it, and you'll see here that my Holy Words light up. My next Holy Word in the next 10 seconds will give a certain benefit. And the coolest one is Sanctify. So when you pop Divine Word and you pop out Sanctify, it creates this little like efflorescent style AoE heal on the ground. Super useful in raids. A lot of the raid encounters in Vault of the Incarnates has opportunities for you to have an AoE heal, and it does very respectable healing. So most of the time, you'll be using Divine Word for Sanctify, practically on cooldown. You can use Serenity if you're running with the higher skill ceiling build, which is like Pontifex and Light of the Naru, but we'll talk about that later. If you're just running this general prayers build, then I would just use Sanctify, 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 create that AoE on the ground and get extra healing, which is another way for you to keep people alive. Your tank external is Guardian Spirit. It's not the best in the game, but it's still super useful. You target person, you put it on them, they get wings. If they were to take damage that would kill them while the wings are up, the wings get consumed and they get healed for a percentage of their HP. Super good. And it also has a big fat healing increase on it. So while they have the wings, they take more healing from all sources, which is super nice. But obviously there's kind of a bummer in that if it runs out, you don't get value. So there's a skill level in using it. Over the years, they've eased up on this as being a restriction. So there's modifiers you can have. Guardian Angel you'll want to run, which is when the Guardian saves the target from death, it doesn't expire, it resets its cooldown, and you can get the bonus healing even if it heals them, which makes it a nice catch-all so that you don't lose that healing benefit while trying to get another heal out of it. The mechanics of this have been reworked so many times. And Guardian Angel also makes it so that when Guardian Spirit expires and it didn't save them from death, then the remaining cooldown is reduced to 60 seconds. So you get a 1 minute cooldown on that rather than a 3 minute. So if you don't save them with it, it can kind of recover. So either way, if you run these two together, Guardian Angel becomes quite useful, but it still would compare it as being moderate or low on the totem pole when it comes to tank externals, because damage reduction is king, like Iron Bar, pain suppression, things like that, because it keeps the tank alive under duress. You actually have several important raid cooldowns when it comes to Holy Priest in raid. So let's talk about a few of them. The first one is Symbol of Hope. This one's super nice. It's a 3 minute cooldown, but while you channel it, each raid member affected will have recover 60 seconds of a cooldown of a major defensive ability and regain missing mana. So you want to use this pretty often. In like Raszageth, you might get a chance to use it 2 or 3 times. You activate it, you channel it, everyone gets affected. They get a defensive cooldown return, which is super useful. They added this recently in the last few years, so it didn't always have this, but it's super nice because then your defensives come up, your personals come up, and it gives mana back to your other healers and yourself. So it's a way to kind of keep mana up. You want to be using this regularly to keep the whole raid ready to go. The other one you have is Divine Hymn. This one is kind of built in. This one is actually quite good in Dragonflight. Sometimes it sucked, sometimes it's bad, sometimes it's good, and I would say right now it's in a really decent spot. So this heals, it's basically Tranquility. You activate it, and I accidentally canceled it. You activate it, and it channels healing over time, and each heal increases all targets healing taken by 4% for 15 seconds stacking. So it increases the healing that they receive over time. So the longer you channel this, the more value you get out of it. You don't want to channel it for a few seconds. So the best option is when you get a mechanic in raid, like Raszageth, when the wings they throw everyone away and they drop down to 10%, you can get a full channel off of Divine Hymn, and then you can heal lots of value out of that, which is really cool. Then your next big cooldown is going to be Holy Word Salvation. This one's awesome. It's basically a Holy Word raid cooldown. So if you thought Holy Word Serenity and Holy Word Sanctify were cool, Salvation is even cooler. Normally you'd run Apotheosis as different builds, but as Dragonflight has progressed, you don't need Apotheosis. It's more of a dungeon cooldown, and we're also going to be able to get Apotheosis a different way, which we'll talk about in a second. The Holy Word Salvation is a casted spell. When it activates and you finish the cast, all allies get healed for an amount, and then it gives them Renew and 2 stacks of Prayer of Mending. Prayer of Mending is your single target effect. Every 10 seconds, you can throw this on a target. They'll get stacks on them. When they take damage, it will heal them and jump to someone else. So you can imagine how useful it is to give everyone in the raid Prayer of Mending, because then when they take damage, all those Prayer of Mendings are jumping around and healing everyone. They get Renew on them. You get extra benefits as well. You get Prayer of Healing, can add more Renews, and you get procs off Renew as well. So this one, you actually want to use earlier in the raid encounter if you can. You don't want to line up with other healers, obviously. Don't try to compete with a Rewind from a Preservation Evoker. But you activate Salvation, boom, it gives you a big fat hot, plus your mastery on them. Everyone has it. Starts bouncing around, gets a bunch of healing. And you can see that it has a big fat 12-minute cooldown. However, when you use your other holy words, Holy Word Serenity and Holy Word Sanctify, it lowers the cooldown on Holy Word Salvation by 30 seconds. So you can see we have a 11:38 left on it. When I throw Sanctify out, it's 30 seconds less. When I throw Serenity out, it's 30 seconds less. That's the reason why you don't want to be using Salvation late in the fight. If you find a way to use it in the beginning or in like the first third, it's great, because then as you're going through the fight, resetting your holy words, getting multiple stacks and using them, you can get Serenity or Salvation to come back off cooldown, which is super, super good. And you get to use it again, which gives you that other raid cooldown besides Divine Hymn, which you got to stand in place and hope you don't die when you're playing Holy Priest. But that's the extra healing that you have. Additionally, and the reasons why I call this raid the raid prayers build is because you'll be using Say Your Prayers and Answered Prayers. Super nice. Say Your Prayers makes it so that when Prayer Mending has a 15% chance to not consume a charge when it jumps. You think about when you use Salvation, it gives 2 stacks to everyone in the raid. If it's like a 25-person raid, 15% chance. Some of those are not going to consume charge, which means they jump again, which is super nice. And then also, after your Prayer Mending heals, 50 times, you get a free Apotheosis for 8 seconds, which if you didn't use Apotheosis before, it makes it so you get a charge for your holy words that reduces their cooldowns by more when you heal. So it refreshes a charge of your so when you pop this, if you have not used up all the stacks of your holy words, it'll reset the cooldown. If you have charges, it'll give you an additional charge. On top of that, it increases the cooldown reduction you have for healings with like heal or flash heal by 300% and reduces their cost. Super nice. So actually normally say I have like a Serenity, I throw out Serenity and I have to cast, 6-7 times to get it to come back off cooldown. When you're inside Apotheosis, that changes to like 2 or 3 times. It's very fast. You can cast twice or 3 times depending on your gear, and then you can Holy Word Serenity again, and then cast 2 or 3 times, and Holy Word Serenity again, and keep cycling that way while you have Apotheosis up. So you can run Salvation, and then with Answered Prayers, if you have Prayer Mending up all the time, you'll get this stacked up. You'll get an Apotheosis. It'll reset your Holy Words, which will give you more opportunity to reset the cooldown on Salvation. All of that works back together. Super cool, super fun synergy. So those are your raid cooldowns that you want to manage to the best of your ability. Let's talk about the other skills you have, especially the ones coming over from your class tree. We talked a lot about Prayer of Mending. This is a single target. You throw it to a target. It puts it on them while they have it with stacks. It heals them when they take damage, jumps to someone new. So it's always jumping out on the raid. You get tons of value out of that, especially when you have, Prayer of Mending gets 2 more stacks. Prayer of Mending has a chance to not consume a stack. You also have ways to give extra stacks to people, which is super nice. So you have those extra little bits there. You also have Prayer of Healing is whatever. We'll talk about that in a second. So throw this out. On 10 second cooldown, you want to be throwing out Prayer of Mending as often as possible. You can, if you don't know who you're going to give it to, the best thing you can do is just give it to the tank. They're always taking damage. It'll jump again. You don't want this sitting on someone that it's going to just expire and not jump. So throw it on the tank. It'll jump once and then it'll start circulating through the raid. You don't really have to worry about it. It's kind of like renewing mist in that way. Then you have the new spell for Holy Priest, which is Power Word Life. I love this spell. This one hits like a wet noodle if you throw it on a target. So if you throw it on a target, it doesn't really do much. It's not that great. But if the target is below 35% health and you hit them, it heals for 400% more, and it lowers the cooldown on it from 30 seconds to 10 seconds. I have my Voodoo profile. If you're looking for that, I actually have a video covering my Voodoo. But the way I have my Voodoo profile set up is that if I'm on Holy Priest and they drop below 35% health, their bar starts highlighting in yellow, so I know who I have to Power Word Life. You really want to hit that window, because if they get healed right before you Power Word Life, again, it hits like a wet noodle. It's pretty weak. It's actually weaker than Renew if you don't hit that window. It can be pretty fat, especially if it crits. Big heal on them. If you miss it, it's bad. So you want to be able to hit Power Word Life regularly. It can be as good or better than Serenity if you're constantly hitting that window. You also have Halo, an amazing raid tool. If you know that AoE raid damage is about to go out, you can cast Halo. It'll cast this big ripple that goes out and heals everyone that it touches, which if you're standing in the right spot, can hit the entire raid every single time. You'll also be running Circle of Healing, super nice, and there's some cool synergies with this as well. You cast Circle of Healing, it's an instant AoE. It just heals 5 targets. And if you're running Prayer Circle, it means that it reduces the cast time and cost of your Prayer of Healing, which is AoE raid heal, for 8 seconds. So 20% for 8 seconds, you can get some value out of that. So what you can do is you can pop your Divine Word, get a Sanctify with an AoE here, throw your Circle of Healing, and then just start casting Prayer of Healing, Prayer of Healing, Prayer of Healing. This will lower the cooldown on your Sanctify. And then if you trigger Apotheosis from Answered Prayers, you'll be able to get that as well, but you're just getting tons and tons of healing out of that, and it gets you really good value. And actually, Prayer of Healing is decently efficient as well in just getting some good heals out for it. We kept Benediction as well, which is nice. Prayer of Mending has a chance to leave a Renew on the target. You also have Prayer of Healing has a chance to apply Renew, and you get Renew from Holy Word Salvation. Put that all together on top of Renewed Faith, it means increases your healing on allies with Renew by 6%, so you get a nice value out of that. Renew isn't super efficient in raid, unlike other healers, but it is your movement heal. So everything that you do besides your holy words, that are instant, is casted. So you have to stand still to do it. But if you have to move a bunch, like there's a big mechanic where everyone has to move around, It's super efficient to just throw out some renews, get a bunch of renews on targets. You'll get some extra procs of Surge of Light, which is nice, and it'll increase your healing on top of the target, which is good too. So nice to be able to use that while you're moving. Now, one of the biggest weaknesses of Holy Priest is just how squishy they are. They're the easiest healer to kill, and I'm sure in your experiences in playing with Holy Priests, oftentimes you'll turn around, you'll see that big Spirit of Redemption that they get when they die, and you'll wonder why your Holy Priest is dead. They are very squishy. They don't have great defensives or ways to keep themselves alive. So, as a Holy Priest, it is imperative that you learn to take care of yourself to make sure that you're aware of mechanics that are coming in that might one-shot you or kill you. You have a few options for damage reduction. They're not great, but it's all we've got. The first is your Fade. Almost all Holy Priest builds run Translucent Image. It means that when you cast Fade, you will be able to take 10% less damage. In some builds, you can run Improved Fade, but it doesn't really fit as well into a raid build. And then you'll get Angelic Bulwark as well, which means that when you drop low, you get an Absorption Shield that goes on cooldown. Your only other option is Desperate Prayer, which is an ability that when you activate it, it gives you, increases your max health by 40%, and then heals you for that amount as well. If you're at low HP, you can get that heal. So what you can do is you pop Desperate Prayer, pop Fade, and then hope that you survive the hit and make sure you don't die. You will be running, normally you can run Binding Heals for self-healing. You're not going to be casting Heal or Flash Heal as much as you would in M+. So instead, we opt for Angel's Mercy, which means that when you take damage while you have Desperate Prayer on cooldown, you can reduce the cooldown of it and get it back in time, which helps keep you alive. And the next thing I'll give to you on that front is that if you know raid-wide damage is coming in, more so than any other healer, keep a close eye on yourself. I've seen so many Holy Priests that just die randomly because they're not paying attention. If you know big damage is coming in, you might have to, like you're on an airplane, they would say put the oxygen mask on yourself before you take care of others. Holy Priest represents that very well in game. Keep an eye on yourself. You might have to Serenity. You might have to Power Word life yourself here to keep yourself alive. You might have to pre-cast an extra heal. Maybe you need to throw a Sanctify on your immediate area, you and whoever else is around, because you absolutely need that heal. But just keep a close eye on yourself. And I hope this helps Holy Priests stop dying in raids randomly, because that's kind of just who they are. It's what they do. Going into some of the other effects that they have, which is really nice, you can do a Purge, which is Dispel Magic. You can remove magic effects from enemies, which is super cool. You can use the Angelic Feather. Unlike Disc, you won't be using your body and soul, so you'll mostly get your speed out of Angelic Feather. This isn't a spell you cast on the ground. Anyone that runs through the feather gets a burst of speed. So you can put this on your tank when they're moving from pack to pack, or someone that's stuck. And keep in mind that this is your only real movement ability. You're rather immobile and you're quite squishy. So if you have this big mechanic that's coming in, like a Razageth breath that you have to get out of the way of, cast Feather on yourself and use it to get out of the way. And typically it's useful to save one stack of your feather so that you can move yourself around so that you don't get caught in something and die. Super important on that front. You do have Leap of Faith, which I would recommend using kind of sparingly as you're learning it. It has so many uses, but it can also end up hurting the person you pull. But you can grab a person in your group and pull them to you. Useful for pulling a tank to a tank swap, or getting someone out, like after they drop something in the back, you can pull them back in. You can get someone out of a knockback. If they get thrown off the platform on Razageth, you can pull them back on as they're flying. It has so many uses, and it's so fun to play with. Power Infusion is a DPS's best friend. People will always ask you for this, and you'll want to use it smartly. Use it on classes that benefit the most from haste, and also make sure you use it on people that are just doing the most damage to increase their damage output. And if you're running Twins of the Sun Priestess, which you almost always will, never cast Power Infusion on yourself, because you'll get Power Infusion when you give it to someone else while you're running this talent. Mind Games is a fun one too. You can use this to help keep your tanks alive. This does damage to the target enemy every 45 seconds, and then their next damage will heal up to a limit, which is super cool. We got this in Shadowlands. It's a fun ability. And even in Raid, it can be useful to kind of give extra healing out, plus some extra damage, which is nice as well. But now let's talk about the other option for Raid. Almost every Holy Priest you see will be running this build specifically, which you'll get down below, but there is another option for you if you want to play, and that revolves around using Pontifex and Light of the Naru. So what Pontifex does is that critical heals from Flash Heal and Heal increase your healing done by your next Holy Word by 10%, stacking up to 2 times. And then Light of the Naru is actually quite, it ends up being better than Harmonious Apparatus if you're casting a lot. The cooldowns of your holy words are reduced by additional up to 20% when you cast the relevant spells. So rather than relying on the extra benefit, Harmonious allows, when your Prayer of Mending jumps, it can reduce the cooldown of Serenity. Circle of Healing can reduce Sanctify. So the other spells that you're using while raiding, rather than just sitting here and casting Flash Heals or Prayer of Healing over and over and over and over, this just gives you passive benefit, and in most raid scenarios will be more valuable than Light of the Naru. But there are some people that have been testing out some higher casting builds where you run Pontifex and you run Light of the Naru, and then you use Pontifex, you stack up like a couple casts to get holy words, then you get a big holy word, then you cast it up again. You can even pick up something like Light Weaver, which can help you get spot healing overall. I don't think this build would be better than running like this normal AoE build, but it can serve as like a spot healing build and is kind of fun and interesting as a different option. So I'll leave a build for this down below in the description if you wanted to try that out. So put it all together and that's what you get. You have Holy Word spells for big burst. You want to be using Divine Word to place down a Sanctify for an AoE heal. Keep targets alive, especially if they're stacked healing. Keep Prayer of Mending on cooldown at all times. It is super value. You get so much value out of it. Use Halo as well. It gives you a big AoE heal on top of that. If you're running the build that I gave you for prayers, you'll have an extra value of Circle of Healing first, then cast Prayer of Healing, which lowers your cooldown. And then use Salvation often to keep yourself, get big raid cooldown, get through some big windows of damage, and then you'll be able to, keep people alive that way. Use Salvation earlier rather than later because you'll be able to reset the cooldown on it. Use Divine Hymn as another raid cooldown. Keep track of your Prayer of Mending jumps. You can see that on screen here. I have a, right here, like on the right side above my target, I have a weak aura that tracks when I'm about to turn into Apotheosis for free. So keep track of that. And then keep track of the stacks you have coming out of it so that you can go right into your free Apotheosis. Keep your holy words on cooldown so that you can refresh them, especially if you get a free bonus from it. And then use Power Word Life, really, really clutch. So actually, let's see if we can catch something here on screen. This is the Razageth I did today. So you clear this out, and then when people get to 35%, if you use my Voodoo profile, it'll have a little marker for it. Their HP will light up, so you can see that when they drop to 35%, they are available for Power Word Life, and it's very binary. If you don't get that right, it can hurt really bad. If you do get it right, you can get some good healing out of Power Word Life. It's almost like another free Serenity. Use your Circle of Hope to keep people up on their defensives and use their mana high. Keep that stacked up. Keep good focus on yourself so that you don't die. You are very squishy. Holy Priests die all the time. It is very common. They're very easy to kill. So just keep an eye on yourself, manage your cooldowns properly, and make sure you don't get caught. And that is basically Holy Priest in Raid. Builds down below if you like them. Hopefully this helps you get started and get into raiding as a Holy Priest. We definitely need more of them. Their throughput is absolutely insane. And that is going to be the build for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope this was helpful. And of course, if you have any questions or comments for me, you'll find me live on twitch.tv/Drybear every single day. Come by and say hi. If you enjoyed yourself today, leave a like down below. You can support me and my work on Patreon and view Patreon exclusive content, link in the description. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.